you know, some would say, look at you and say, it's easy for you as a white, male, middle-class academic to push for this chaos-inducing Trump presidency because you're not going to suffer as a result of it. Who's paying the price, Slavoj Žižek? You won't be paying the price. It's women in hijabs in the street who are having their headscarves pulled off by Trump supporters. It's racists who are emboldened. It's poor black people who are going to lose health insurance in the United States. They're the ones paying the price. You won't be paying the price. It's very easy for others to pay the price for your utopian vision.
Once upon a time, there was a king who really liked his donkey. Like, really, really liked his donkey. But he really wanted this donkey to speak so they could communicate. So he sent all his advisors all over town so they could find someone who could teach the donkey to speak. Everyone said, get the out of here, except for one guy who said, I can do it. So the king was like, really? He said, yeah. All I need is 40 years of funding, nice food and drink, accommodation, and nobody to question my methods. The king, incredibly desperate to see how this would go, says, sure, okay, deal. The guy's friend comes to him and says, dude, what are you doing? You can barely communicate yourself, let alone teach a donkey. And the guy goes, don't worry. The life expectancy of a donkey is 40 years. In 40 years, either I'll be dead, the king will be dead, or the donkey will die.
That's it, that's the whole story.
It's a metaphor, dude, like how thinkers often speak about those outside their context. They themselves have basically zero skin in the game. Whether or not the donkey can talk is pretty much irrelevant for them, yet because of their promise of expertise, they're trusted and well-funded. This is a point that Mehdi Hassan in his interview with Zizek brings up. You won't be paying the price, yet it's your words that are being published and influence people's understanding of things. Now the interview, which is on YouTube, got a lot of hate, saying that Mehdi Hassan is a terrible interviewer and that this was more of an interrogation rather than an interview. But I actually thought it represented something quite interesting, which relates to Dabashi's book, Can Non-Europeans Think?, which is another story, but a real one, this time that involves none other than Zizek. On December 25th, 2012, Santiago Zabala wrote the article Slavoj Žižek and the Role of the Philosopher for Al Jazeera. It basically talks about why Zizek is an extremely important philosopher who disrupts today's neoliberal sensibilities. The article starts with this sentence.
Every philosopher he names is European.
Exactly. This is what Hamid Dabashi noted in his reply titled, Can Non-Europeans Think?
Wait. When you say, can non-Europeans think, does he mean, like, do they have brains?
No. It's like when Spivak asked the question, can the subaltern speak? It's not like, oh, do they have tongues or verbal abilities? It's a critical engagement with disciplines that claim to write about others. In the same way, Dabashi conjures a series of interesting questions. Why is European philosophy philosophy, but African philosophy ethno-philosophy? Why is it that the study of Mozart is music, but the most sophisticated Indian music is subject to ethnomusicology? In the text, he says, what immediately strikes the reader when seeing this opening paragraph is the unabashedly European character and disposition of the thing the author calls philosophy today, thus laying a claim on both the subject and time that is peculiar and in fact an exclusive property of Europe. To be sure, China and Brazil and Australia, which is also a European extension, are cited as the location of other philosophers worthy of the designation, but none of them evidently merits a specific name to be sitting next to these eminent European philosophers.
But wait a minute, if you're from Europe like Zabala is, aren't you bound to look at things like that?
Dabashi acknowledges that. He even says that the question of Eurocentrism is now entirely blasé and uninteresting because it's so obvious. His point lies elsewhere. He goes on to say that in Gramsci's prison notebooks there's a short discussion about Kant's famous phrase in Groundwork of Metaphysics and Morals. Kant's maxim, act in such a way that your conduct can become a norm for all men in similar conditions, is less simple and obvious than it appears at first. What is meant by similar conditions? Dabashi then directs us to the fact that similar conditions, the word, does not appear in the original text, and that this is in fact a mistranslation. What Kant actually says is, I am never to act otherwise than so that I could also will that my maxim should become a universal law.
The categorical imperative.
Exactly. So when Kant says universal law, Gramsci says a norm for all men. And then he adds an additional similar conditions, which is not in the original. But Dabashi points out that this misquote is actually quite critical. Gramsci's conclusion is that the reason Kant can say all these things is because he's putting his own behavior as the measure of universal ethics, which presupposes a single culture, single religion, and worldwide conformism that is connected with the cosmopolitan Enlightenment. He then goes in with this stinger. The imperial hubris that once enabled that Eurocentrism and still produces the infomercials of the sort we read in Al Jazeera for Zizek are the phantom memories of the time that the West had assured confidence and a sense of its own universalism and globality.
And then this essay provoked from some multicultural, post-colonial, blah blah, anti-Eurocentrist guys a pretty violent response, predictably accusing me of Eurocentrism and so on.